Okay, it's 12:15. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you're just joining us, we were taking just a few moments to kind of pop into the little room that we have here. So before we begin, we have a whopping 18 people with us online today. That's quite a bit, and 2 faculty face to face. So I'm starting to see that this online virtual thing is really catching on here at the center. So just really quickly, I know that we have quite a few participants, but if you guys could quickly, this should maybe take 2 minutes, just say where you're from, your name and where you're from, not any long or lengthy introduction, but if you guys don't mind just popping up saying what your name is and where you're from, what institution, or if you're from FAU, just what department. We can start with anyone who's willing.
Michael Crane, School of Accounting in Davie.
David Mann, College of Education in Boca Raton.
Hi, David. Hi, Michael.
Sarah McCool, University of West Florida, instructional designer.
Excellent.
Lisa Finnegan, Exceptional Student Education Department in the College of Ed, Boca campus.
Wonderful.
Fonda Lieberman, School of Architecture, Fort Lauderdale campus.
Bob Cerveny, Tennessee.
Awesome.
Janice Cerveny, also in Tennessee, even though we're both with FAU in Boca.
Related by any chance? Okay, go on. Anybody else?
Lisa Siachi in the College of Education in Davie.
Excellent. Others want to chime in?
What do I want to take out my cell phone?
Okay, cool. Our peeps here. Anybody want to say where you're from, what you do here real quick?
My name is Dale Williams. I'm with the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders.
Journey Jameson. I'm with the School of Public Administration here at FAU.
Wonderful.
I'm not logged in. I'm sorry.
No, you're just
okay.
fine.
Oh, I don't
You're
have to be logged in.
We are just fine.
From education, I do art education. From the teacher learning.
Wonderful.
Charlotte Maloney.
Okay, excellent. It's so good to have you guys. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if they already said it out loud, but I have Cindy Mercer from UWF. Sarah McCool from Instructional Design from UWF. Sherry Edwards from Waverly Library in Boca Raton. Mimi Lascano from Florida International University. Pete Siga at Leadership and Research. Guy Hancock, Ultimate Medical Academy, Tampa Technology Instructor. Serena Holman, FAU Center for Environmental Studies, Student in Jupiter. Christina Osiak, FAU Davie. And Roxana Stefanescu, FAU Boca.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's joining us both locally and interstate. Thank you guys for joining us. I just came back from Tennessee. Actually, I was in Dandridge. So thanks for those of you who are joining us from afar. Okay, my name is Allison Hall. Allison Copeland, actually, I just got married. So we're going to talk today about alignment and blueprints. And before we get started, I wanted to conduct a very quick poll using the Poll Everywhere tool. It's a pretty popular tool these days. So please go ahead and respond to this question. How do you prepare instruction and assessments for your online course? The way you begin responding to this poll is just by typing in a text message to that same number you just joined. So you can start typing right there and it should pop up on the screen.
What's the same number?
37607. So just type the message to that 37607 number and it'll start popping up. Excellent. I've got some people already starting to chime in, so that's perfect. So as I'm sharing my screen with you all, you should be able to see some of the responses that are coming in from your colleagues across the state. That's a really good response. That's why I'm attending, to learn how to. Keep them flowing in, guys. There are like 25 of you, so If you want to type in, go right ahead. Sure. So when you're assigned to teach an online or a hybrid course, what's your process? How do you begin designing your instruction? How do you begin preparing? How do you know what you're going to teach? Is there a lesson plan system that you stick to? Do you design your lesson plans on paper? Do you do it? Is it kind of all up in your head? I know a lot of faculty say it's all in here. I know what I'm going to teach. And when I get started online, I'll just start doing it then. So how do you prepare? What is your preparation method? What do you do to start preparing the content for your online course? And that could be assessments, assignments, that could be instructional materials, that could be videos. Make an outline. Awesome. Yeah.
Russ says set up my slides and upload them on Blackboard or now in Canvas, present them in class and make them available for our students.
Excellent.
David Mann says, good point. I would like to use my PowerPoint as a basis for written instruction.
Excellent. Okay, we've got quite a few responses here, and I'm going to kind of read them off very quickly. So the first person says, work on an assessment planner. Since this is my first opportunity to create an online course, I have to see what I'll be doing. I'll attempt to take the exercises and assessments, and I know that one is abridged because of the system. Figure out what my objectives are and then create content. That's why I'm attending. I want to learn how to align the objectives. We're going to talk a lot about that today. Divide the course into subject units and determine when assessments should be. Visualize what the students will need to know to get focused and started and be competent at the end. Start with goals, move towards learning objectives, make an outline, work from objectives outwards, create a lesson plan with objectives, activities, instructional materials between all the components. Working on a course design blueprint exercise was very eye-opening to see how objectives, assessments, and goals are related. I'm going to keep going because that's a bridge as well. Much like a live one, except I create videos and lay out kind of a timeline, I'm assuming. Divide the material in the amount of time given. Develop the overall objectives. Determine the key components of skills, capabilities, or knowledge that students, starting with the assumptions that they probably perhaps don't maybe have a foundation in what you're teaching. Okay, excellent. We can see that there is a variance, and we're coming from all over the university, from different disciplines and from different parts of the state, which is really beautiful. But we can see that there are a lot of different methods for designing instruction in an online class. And a lot of people do it in the same way that they do face-to-face, in that they kind of think about what they're going to do, they prepare an outline, or it is kind of a mental process, and they proceed from there. So today, we're going to talk primarily about alignment and using the course blueprint that the Center for E-Learning has adapted to design instruction for primarily online classes, but also for hybrid courses as well. Okay, so just as with all the courses that the Center for E-Learning designs, we're going to start, of course, with objectives here. And by the end of this session, hopefully we'll all be able to explain alignment, and that's the objectives, assessments, and instructional activities. Identify a method for aligning course objectives and assessments. We should all be able to explain the utility of the e-learning blueprint tool that I'll be sharing with you all today, and then use the CEL blueprint tool to align objectives and assessments and instructional activities. And that's going to be more of a hands-on activity, so I'll provide a link for us to do so in a Google slide, and we'll go from there. Okay, so this session is really meant to be very interactive, and let me just do a time check really quick. All right, so we're about 10 minutes in. What is instructional alignment? This is meant to be kind of a discussionary kind of thing, but I'm going to go ahead and move forward with it. So alignment is really ensuring that your learning objectives, the assessments of those learning objectives, and the instructional strategies are appropriately associated. It's seeing the match or the matchup of the written, the taught, and the tested curriculum. And that sounds like really simple, super rudimentary, but sometimes when we think about what we're doing in our classes and we say, well, I'm going to teach today about the Spanish Inquisition, and then in class the discussion kind of veers to the right or to the left. And at the end of that class, the objective is not met because in essence, there may or may not have been a real objective to have been met. So the point of instructional alignment is really to make sure that when instructors go into the classroom, when we all walk into the classroom, there is a very clear, very precise purpose, and that we have kind of outcomes that we want the students to be able to achieve at the end of that instruction. And I know that most of us have those things kind of in our head, but articulating them on paper is really the process of designing a blueprint so that we have goals in mind that our students are set to meet. So instructional alignment exists. This is just a quote from one of the articles that I'll reference today. Instructional alignment exists when what the teacher intends to teach, the objectives, matches the practice activities, various tasks and games, and is checked during assessment or closure. So when your objectives, your assessments, and your instructional activities kind of all coincide, they all kind of intermingle with one another, then we say that instructional alignment is achieved. And that's very, it can be measurable, but it's also based on each of you have a subject matter expertise. So in your own subject matter, you will be the final determinant, the judge of whether they align or not. Okay, so this, I got a lot of my information from a few sources. Wiggins and McTighe's, what's the name of that source? Is Judy online? It's Backwards Design. And then Carnegie Mellon has a wonderful site on instructional alignment as well. And that's a resource I'll provide at the end of this presentation. So one question is, why should assessments, learning objectives, and instructional strategies be aligned? Does anybody want to chime in on that? Agree, disagree? If this is really an open question. Should they, and why do you believe they should or shouldn't?
I'll chime in.
Yeah,
I do agree very strongly that this has to be aligned, only because otherwise I think what we do is we go in and we say we're going to cover the Spanish Inquisition, and that's what we do. But whether or not, you know, what was the purpose, what do you want them to be able to know or be able to do at the end of it, and not bothering to check or thinking that if we just give them a test that somehow, you know, okay, they learned it. Maybe that's not the case. So I think that's why this really has to be planned out.
That's beautiful. Anybody else? Thank you, James. Yeah, please, lady.
Lascano, it's a must for them to align, clarifies purpose and end goal.
Absolutely. It's a must that we align to clarify the purpose and the end goal. Jenny, she said something just now. We want them to learn something. Learn is such a very difficult goal to reach because our students walk away with various levels of learning or understanding, etc. And I remember when I was first learning about writing objectives, I would say, I know what learning means, but what do we actually mean? So writing these objectives helps us to articulate what it means to learn in our heads, so to speak. So assessments in the alignment process reveal how well the students have learned what we want them to learn, or how well they've achieved the goals that we've aspired for them to achieve. And then the instruction is what ensures that they've learned it. So being very deliberate about each piece of the instruction helps us to meet the learning outcomes a little bit better. So for this to occur, assessments, learning objectives, and instructional strategies should really be a piece of a puzzle that all fit together here. So I have a short example, and then I created some makeshift, very rogue matching activity, and we'll do that in just a moment. So if students are studying a unit on natural disasters, reading accounts of the experiences and learning about cause and effect, an assessment could be including a reading about a different catastrophe or writing a research report on how it occurs. And so instead of just talking about natural disasters or covering natural disasters and kind of throwing things at the wall and hoping that they stick, one of the things that we do in designing courses here at the Center for E-Learning is we ask each of our faculty members, how do you know that what you just taught was actually absorbed by your students? And one of the ways that we're able to answer that question is through the assessment? How do we know that what we just said to that student was conveyed in the way we intended to convey it? And that's done through, of course, the instructional strategy and the assessment to see if what we said they actually received. And it doesn't always have to be a test or discussion board. And that's where you can come to one of the instructional designers here. And I'm sure at some of the other institutions that are represented in this development session to figure out how to adapt certain assessment techniques so that students are proving their learning in various ways, or at least exemplifying their learning in various ways. Okay, so here's my little match game. When I thought about matching up assessments and instructional strategies or objectives and assessments, I thought about that kind of old school card flip game that was like a memory match kind of thing. So that's what I've done here. So for example, an example of alignment is going to be for, let's say an objective would be constructing an assessment plan. Then potentially the connecting assessment or assignment could be an assessment planner. For those of you who are taking the eCert workshop, that is a big piece of the eCert workshop, constructing an assessment planner, and it meets the objective of constructing an assessment plan. Another example, let's say we're saying to develop unit objectives is an objective. Then a potential matching assessment, and this is one of many. A potential matching assessment could be a discussion board on providing examples of module objectives that you developed. Then a third example, the objective could be discuss assessment challenges. Kind of the logical next step then is a discussion board on assessment challenges. So this little connection is what we call the alignment, making sure that if we're asking them, if we are saying by the end of this lesson, a student should be able to develop unit objectives, then logically speaking, we should ask them to do so. So those little arrows going to and fro are the alignment pieces that we are anticipating or hoping our student, requiring ourselves to do so that our students are able to meet the objectives we're asking. Lady?
David says in face-to-face class, I ask, does everybody understand or are there any questions? This alignment is more effective and requires an assessment of each student.
Yeah, absolutely. I've asked that so many times and I just get like head nods, blank stares, and I take that as solid. David, that's a really good observation. Other people? Please.
Yeah. Well, what I kind of do is at the end of the class, I do just a hypothetical question, and they go home and post it to the, well, then it was Blackboard. And they do a little bit of research on what I talked about.
Oh, that's nice.
At the end of every class, there's a little, so that would be classwork. So they don't just sit there and listen, but they also have to, you know,
give their feedback.
Yeah. A teacher told me that once. I thought it's very effective for, because long term is harder. This way, at each class, I get a little something back.
Step by step. Other folks, you're welcome to speak.
Well, I just think that when you, I like what was said about being when you're in class, but the problem with that is there's some students that just never talk unless you sort of embarrass them in class and say, well, what do you think? And, but yet that's one of the things I like about online. It's kind of like everybody's on a level playing field. Everybody has to contribute. Where some students are just really reluctant to talk. So I think that point is well made. You really have to assess individually.
Absolutely. In mediums, like in online classes, just as an aside, perhaps this provides the opportunity for those students who are a little reluctant to speak in the face-to-face medium to kind of provide their voice without having kind of the harshness of all eyes on you. So that's been considered to be a benefit of online learning. Anybody else? Any other comments? Or yeah, go ahead.
Before the exam in my class, I offer them a list of topics and questions that they should be able to answer during the exam. So I found and they reported back to me that this is very, very helpful to structure the information and prepare them for exam. They appreciated very much this list. So it's for each exam, you can think of a list of 20, 30 points, questions or concepts that they have to make sure that they understood and they can answer before they enter in the exam.
Excellent. And that, in a way, is your form of objectives because
Yes,
you're kind of making it
that
very
is basically my alignment. I do an alignment, of course, in every class, as I am making sure that I emphasize the main objectives and the main concepts that they have to retain from the class. But students will forget from one class to another. They are bombarded with tons of information, and they will forget what they have learned. But when they are preparing for the exam, they will try to review and learn again all the information that they encountered during the part of the semester. And having a list of topics and questions can guide them and structure this learning process very well.
excellent. Thank you very much. That's very good. So I like that you said to guide the students because this a lot of what we're doing is really to kind of focus their learning because a lot of what we throw at students is sometimes received in a way that it just totally was not intended to be received. So providing those objectives helps to guide the student, helps to kind of set them on a track. And the tool that we use to do that is called a blueprint, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So, yeah, please.
David commented on the previous speaker that questions ahead of class direct student attention and let them know what is important to the instructor, what may be on the test, and it's a good idea.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. I completely agree. So to ensure that these three components, the learning objectives, the assessments, and the instructional strategies are aligned, ask yourself the following questions. What do I want the students to know how to do when they leave this course? And for some areas of expertise, it's not a how-to. It's kind of what do I want them to know? What do I want them to walk away with? So for those areas of specialization that are not kind of hard, so to speak, and it's more abstract, what do I want them to know, period, when they leave this course? And then assessments. What kind of tasks will reveal whether students have achieved the learning objectives that I have identified? These are all the questions that we put into our heads. And kind of when you're designing your questions, is it Roz? I hope I don't have your name incorrect. But these are the kinds of questions that we're asking ourselves, right? When we're designing those objectives or those type of leading questions. And then the instructional strategies. What kinds of activities in and out of class will reinforce my learning objectives and prepare students for assessments? So for you, that's a good example of the questions that you provide outside of class on the discussion board to reinforce what you guys talked about in class. So these are the types of questions that we want to ask as we're preparing our coursework, as we're aligning our subject matter or our instructional materials. So the tool that we use at the Center for E-Learning, we refer to as, of course, Blueprint. And it's somewhat of a roadmap of the learning modules in your course. It uses a numbering system to link all of the assessments, activities, and the content back to course and module objectives. And many of you, if you're inside the e-certification workshop, you've seen this document and you've kind of played with it. You either love it or you hate it. But it's something that can be very useful in the course. Something that can be tedious, but it's also a very useful tool. So we're going to practice this in just a few moments, but at the very top, you'll notice that there are course level objectives. And that usually is established by the department, and they've been approved by SACS for some faculty, whether you're adjunct or full faculty. Some of us have written our course level objectives ourselves, but others are established by the faculty or department administrators. So those course level objectives, they come with every course. The level that we're focused on in this particular workshop are the module level objectives. because the course level objectives seem to be oftentimes a little bit more general. So the course level objectives, we have really the power. We kind of have carte blanche over the course level, the module level objectives, and can really articulate at each kind of granular level what we want those students to know, do, read, watch, etc., and how those things pull together, how they link up. So what we've developed in our center is kind of a numbering system to kind of match every activity and every piece of the lesson to the module level objective. So if you'll notice around here, I'm going to go down to it, where it says Journal Academic Identity 1:2. The 1:2 indicates that the assessment and the lesson content, which is right over here, a research-based article, line up with module objective 1. And that's what the 1 is in the front. So it's module objective, unit 1, module objective 2. So they both align to this. Analyze initial perceptions of academic identity in the face-to-face versus online. So that's kind of the numbering system that we use to make sure that as we articulate our objectives, all of the assessments that we are employing, all of the content that we're using in this class are going to line up to the objectives that we've articulated in our early statements. Yeah, lady?
Kathleen Morton commented, I have used the case management approach, which will allow them to use the learning objectives to show they have retained the objectives being taught.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's really the point, right? To make sure that our students are applying, they're using, and they're actually walking away with what we have in store for them in a way. Okay, so the utility of the course blueprint in the classroom. Are there any other examples of other ways that you guys have aligned your content or kind of pulled it all together for students in your course? Now, the document that I just showed you, this is typically more for the instructor, but it also could be student facing. We provide this to our students, and some students really appreciate it. Some students don't ever look at this document. But if you were to use something like this, it really is more helpful for the instructor than it is for the student, in my opinion. But some people may disagree with that. Other comments? Again, I'm open to that. Utility of the blueprint in an online course. So using a blueprint helps you to see the why for the content. So, for example, a student may wonder why they have to read a certain article or watch a certain video. By referring to that document, you'll be able to see which course level or module level objective the article or video fulfills. So how do they interlink? How do they kind of lock up? Okay, so let's practice. So I have a little link here. If you guys want to go ahead, you can type it in. If you're following along, you can just exit and type in this link. Okay, I'm going to follow along with you all there. And I clearly have to make a few more. Didn't expect so many guests today. But we're going to go ahead and so please choose a slide that's not occupied by someone already. And you're going to go ahead and practice using the blueprint tool that we have here at our center. So what that looks like is I provided the example blueprint right on slide 1. And an example of the the blueprint numbering system, the alignment system that we use. So you can go ahead and jump on a slide that's not being occupied. And you can see I have, I think, about 20 slides that anybody can use.
How do you know if it's not being occupied?
Very good question. If you look up on the screen, you'll see colors on the ones that are being occupied.
Oh, okay.
But on the ones that aren't, there are no colors underneath it. Yep, no problem. And that's for anybody online as well. If you see colors on it, you can move to the next one and go ahead and start to, it's going to be based on the course that you teach or the course that you're slated to teach or want to teach. You can put your name, what would be the module topic for module 1 or module 10 or whatever module you want to design for, and then articulate an objective, an assessment, and lesson content. And kind of the big piece is pulling them all together with the numbering system, the alignment numbering system that you'll see on the example blueprint on slide 1. If you have questions, please type them out ask. This is really just kind of a practice piece, but it's kind of getting used to using the tool. Okay, we're gonna take maybe 2 or 3 more minutes and we can start sharing out just maybe 3, 4 examples of some of the objectives and assessments that you've used that have worked really well for you. Take your time. Okay, we have 8 minutes left, and I want to take an opportunity and allow anyone who wants to kind of share their objectives. Now, one of the biggest pieces too is to kind of try to use the alignment piece. If you can, the numbering system that is exemplified on slide 1. And if you want, we can try to maybe do that together. That might be a good exercise for us to do, kind of align it together. I see Dale Williams has some pretty cool things going on his and has used the numbering system. Dale, would you be willing to share? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Excellent.
I don't know about pretty cool, but yeah. Do you want me to go ahead, or do you have a specific?
Please do. Go right ahead.
Question. The first module topic will have to do with building research or research on top of other research. Oh,
I just pull it in.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of terms I'll have to define, concepts I'll have to explain. Just sort of going off the top of my head, so it's not a complete list here. And then the assessment is actually something I have students do. So at the end of the unit, they have to compose research questions, research hypothesis, one each in voice and fluency and language, etc. The main areas of the field. That's a written assignment, I suppose, for an online class. It could be discussion board. It could be an assignment, where the assignment is and they type things in. It's really more an assignment that's going to be used later for a bigger assignment. And then lesson content, I assume that's what it's based on. There will be a module reading and textbook reading.
Excellent. So we've got all the objectives here, and I actually should number them as opposed to bullet them, so that the numbering system makes sense. So this particular assignment links to objective 1 and 3, where they define theory and define research hypothesis and research question. And then his reading and his instruction also have a numbering system where his module 1 reading, for example, links to objectives 1 through 3. And his chapters, Robert and Schultz, chapter 1, link to objective 1 and 2. That's exactly what we're asking for, at least in this particular model of aligning and kind of providing that level of connection. This is what we're asking for. So this is cool. Anybody else want to share?
Maybe you could help me
Please.
set it up.
Yeah.
You could,
What number are you on?
12. Because this is something I was thinking of teaching this summer.
Okay.
With my summer class that starts
Excellent.
tomorrow.
Excellent.
So
we've got, is it Metropolitan Museum of Art and Bower Met?
Yeah.
Okay, so the topic we have, then learning objective, learn about the exhibits at the Met and Bower Met Museum this spring, and then research the Met website. So this would potentially line up with a course objective. Not sure which one because we don't have them available, but that's completely okay. And if this is the only objective for this module, which is completely fine because you don't need a slew of objectives if you have one.
Should it be for the whole course or just one module?
For a particular module. With this blueprint, we kind of go very granular and piece it out week by week or session by session. How often you all meet kind of helps to provide an influence on how you structure your objectives. And then since you have one objective, the assumption is that research on the Met website and choosing an artist in the exhibit and then describing the artwork and why you chose it, this meets the module objective. If we're going to talk about, last week we talked about blooms. And so one thing we probably would adjust a bit is the first word in this objective, which is learn, because it's really hard to quantify that. So if we want them to explain the exhibits at the Met, that's easier to to say this person has explained this, as opposed to saying this person has learned about this. So maybe one of the suggestions that I would make as an instructional designer is to say, perhaps try using a word like explain, or maybe using terms like identify 3 or more, something like that, so that it becomes a little bit more quantifiable as opposed to being a little bit more abstract.
Explain, what was the other one? Explain.
Explain is just fine. You could also, in the margins, I note like identify, just other ideas about how you can make it a little bit more specific and a little bit less abstract. And then this video slideshow from a trip, 1, 1, and then that all comes together. Anybody else want to kind of talk about their slide or provide feedback on one? Yeah, absolutely.
Does something like demonstrate, is that equivalent of explain or?
Bob, absolutely. I think demonstrate is a little bit higher on Bloom's cognitive domains. It goes a little bit higher in the low cognitive load. But if that is where you are, that absolutely is a perfect verb for something that's a little bit more than explain, but a little bit less than create. So you want them to demonstrate the use of. I've used that objective quite a bit in courses that I help to design for computer science classes, where they have to show their code or they have to show how their particular software works, something that they design works. They're not necessarily creating a software. They are putting into practice what the instructor has required of them to do. So they're demonstrating that they have an understanding of something. So demonstrate is really a good term.
Okay, the course I'm dealing with, we do some programming in.
Yes.
And so that would be create as opposed to demonstrate?
No, demonstrate is just fine. Demonstrate is just fine. And Bloom's has a list of, I'm sure many people are familiar with Bloom's kind of verbs that you can use to help you quantify what you want your students to do. So we use Bloom's list a lot, Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive domain verbs that are helpful in identifying how you want your students, how you want to write your objectives. And that's very Googleable.
Judy Summers in the last professional demonstration section, I think, or it was in the content itself, had a page, a couple pages with all of the action verbs, if you want to call them that.
Absolutely.
And deliverables.
May I ask a question, please?
Please.
So this blueprint that we can develop for class, is this supposed to be for us as teachers or for students? Is this supposed to be shared via Canvas or Blackboard or something like this? And then we can track their progress in make sure the alignment of the teaching with their acquisition of concepts and testing?
That's a very good question. That really is the instructor's prerogative. For the courses that we design, we do share this out with the students. We provide it for them. It's not super emphasized, but it is a very big document for the instructor. So when we sit down face to face with a faculty member to design a class with them, this is kind of our very foundational piece. And then they can share this document out with their students, kind of explaining, this is your course roadmap. This is where we're going. This is how we plan to get there. And this is what I expect you to be able to do at the end of each session. It's a very useful tool. Some students may be confused by it. That's why we put a little blurb and explain to them. This kind of explains the why of the class. But I think it's a really good tool to use for your with your students in designing, for sure.
So you could actually just include it in your syllabus, right?
Yes, you could.
I remember under Blackboard there was a place you could post your blueprint.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We use Canvas here. I know that some state institutions are still using Blackboard. There's a variant. Some use Desire to Learn. There's always a place where you can just upload the Word document, the PDF of this document. The only thing to make sure of is perhaps the reason why it's more so for faculty is that as some semester after semester, as you start to tweak some of the content and perhaps some of the objectives, you want to make sure that you also tweak this document so that you don't have antiquated or mismatched information inside of your classes. But
one more question, please.
Yeah.
So, in the recent requirements for the assessment at the level of college and university, is this blueprint a requirement, or I can choose to have it or not, depending on how I consider it to be best for my class?
Presently, nope, it is not a requirement at all. But for the faculty that we help here at the center, doing a one-on-one designing process, during a one-on-one designing process in our classes, we use this as our roadmap.
I understand the utility. I just wonder if it is mandatory to have this for whatever other assessment program.
No, it's totally optional.
Okay.
Totally optional.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Doreen?
You know, I just realized, because now that we've switched to Canvas, in Blackboard we used to have the objectives in every module, and Canvas really doesn't ask for that.
Yep, we have a new template also here at the center. We kind of do the exact same thing that we did in Blackboard, which is provide a section for the objectives.
Oh, okay.
For each one. So
I like that.
Yep, we have it, and I could definitely give that to you.
Okay. It'll go right into Canvas.
That's right.
Great.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we've reached time. I'm just gonna quickly, a lot of what we've done today has been, of course, influenced by a lot of the writing from Carnegie Mellon, from Wiggins and McTighe. Pearson Assessments has some information on instructional alignment. If you're interested in learning more, you can, of course, go to these websites, or also come to the center. That is all. If you guys have no more questions, then that's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much.